He said this while receiving a delegation from the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria yesterday. Now, the lawmaker warned that as the most populous black nation in the world, Nigeria's failure could have a global impact. Honorable Abbas has asked the U.S. to continue to look inward and see how it can support Nigeria in the wars against corruption, banditry, Boko Haram, and many others.
And elsewhere on Security Watch, the National Youth Council of Nigeria, NYCN, and the Arewa Youth Movement, AYM, staged a protest at the entrance to the National Assembly yesterday, calling for the resignation of the Minister of Defense, Muhammad Badaru. The protesters were seen carrying placards that read, quote, "Sleeping Badaru, it is time to wake up," and "Where is Badaru?" AYM Secretary Nasser Ishaku, who spoke on behalf of the groups, said they had been observing the attitude of the minister to work and they were not impressed by his performance, describing it as lackluster. Mr. Ishaku asserted that the security situation in the country has continued to deteriorate since Mr. Badaru's appointment. He called on President Bola Tinubu to prevail on the minister to resign if he is unable to discharge the function of his office. And that's Security Watch this morning, but stay with us, there are more conversations on the way.
Good morning. This is your daily Security Watch on Now Breakfast. Stay tuned to your Beyond the News station daily for our up-to-the-minute compact news bulletins from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., bringing you a wide range of local and international news from our news desk. Stay informed, stay updated on Radio Now 95.3 FM.
We are intentional about the stories we tell and the language we use in telling them.
Intentional about the people we speak to and why we speak to them.
Because here at Radio Now 95.3 FM, we aren't just telling any story.
We are telling your story.
And your story is all that matters.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
This is Now Breakfast.
From the north to the south, real people.
So like I said to you, it's some serious elements of the outgoing entity of my party whose tenure elapsed, who are pleading with me to endorse an illegal extension, and I refuse to be a part of any illegality.
Real stories every morning.
Most of the IDPs, they stay in schools. And once they move in schools, when there is a disaster, the school in that area is automatically shut down.
This is Today in the News on Now Breakfast.
Today in the news, the Budget Office has published the detailed line-by-line copy of the 27.5 trillion naira proposed 2024 budget. A quick look at the numbers shows 3.25 trillion naira for defense and security, 2.18 trillion naira for education, 1.33 trillion for the health sector, and a similar 1.32 trillion for infrastructure. Now, according to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the budget focuses on security, local job creation, macroeconomic stability, investment environment optimization, human capital development, poverty reduction, and social security. But how reflective of this plan are the allocations in the budget? Joining us this morning to discuss this is Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, an economist. Mr. Mohammed, good morning and welcome. Now that the line items have been published, what is your general impression?
Well, I think for me, the budget as presented, when you look at the critical sectors, are not bad. But again, when you look at some other expenditure, because the president has said that the budget is all about education, infrastructural development, and human capacity. And when you see what was allocated for education, what was allocated for security, what was allocated for those two critical sectors that the president talked about, I think it looks nice. But when you look at other details in terms of expenditures within the presidency, you look at expenditure in the area of recurrent expenditure, not even expenditure, there is more to desire, especially in this time we are going through this crunch economic season.
Mr. Mohammed, there's a bit where essentially we have more than 4 trillion naira allocated to service-wide votes, right? And this is under the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. Some analysts have raised it as a source of concern because year on year we've essentially seen this figure increasing more and more. Do you think that it's an effective allocation?
I didn't get the question. Please can come again.
We've seen more than 4 trillion naira allocated to service-wide votes. This is under the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. And over the years, we've heard analysts essentially flag this because we continue to see an increase in this particular allocation with every budget. Do you think that it's an effective allocation, especially when it comes to implementing it?
It's not. Implementation is a problem because, again, those that have been given the responsibility of trying to make sure that we have budget performance are not doing their duties, that is, members of the National Assembly. It seems to be after the passing of the budget and everything released, everybody goes to sleep. So most analysts, even I, have complained about that area, and I think, unfortunately, we thought it's a new administration with a kind of economic restructuring that they are trying to do, economic revolution. We thought they would look at some of these critical issues and begin to take a new step towards them. Because this budget of Renew Hope, and we are still doing same of same, because actually if I look at that budget, nothing has changed. When you look at allocation for cars, you look at allocation for recurrent expenditure, you look at debt servicing, I think that has gone down a little, 5%. And basically, I think the budget is a very ambitious budget, and if you have an ambitious budget and you are seeing other areas that are not supposed to be looked at, or allocation reduced in that area, and this allocation increase, then you begin to ask yourself where the Renew Hope in this budget.
Right. Mr. Mohammed, we're seeing a 2.18 trillion naira as the budget for education. And the president has talked about this particular budget being one that will focus on human capital development. Do you think the percentages, I believe it's about 7.9% of the budget, do you think this particular allocation will ideally address the challenges that we have when it comes to developing the children that we have in Nigeria, especially in line with the idea of that human capital development?
Well, I don't think it will be enough, and that amount went that high because of the student loan. So ordinarily, if you remove the student loan, you get that amount. So I think again the student loan can also be said to be human capital development. But again, we need to look at the modality of those that could access that loan. Because if you say the minimum, the minimum as people, the household of students that can accept that loan, their parents will earn up to about 500,000 per annum. And if you look at 500,000 per annum by the minimum wage, then definitely, the poor they are trying to help with that loan might not be able to access that loan in the educational sector to be able to do human capital development, like it pointed out. In terms of infrastructure, I still think that the government should begin to do a PPP, especially when it comes to tertiary education, and concentrate more on primary and secondary, while you allow the universities to give them. I'm not saying that they shouldn't give them the allocation, because the president was saying that to collect about 40%, but thank God he reversed that pronouncement. And so now I think they should begin to tell the schools to partner with them. And also, the schools should begin to work hand in hand with the alumni of those schools to begin to bring development, especially in the area of structural infrastructure. But when it comes to student loan, I think that money might not be enough, and even if it is enough, if it's going to go, how the modality for people to access that, the student to access that loan, especially when your household is not earning up to 500,000 per annum.
Well, Mr. Ahmed, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. That was our guest this morning on the segment, Mr. Mukhtar Mohammed, an economist, talking to us about the line-by-line copy of the 27.5 trillion naira proposed 2024 budget. The rest of Now Breakfast continues in just a moment.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
The federal government is considering the loss and damage funds committed at the 28th United Nations Conference of the Parties COP28. This is as an alternative for cheaper and free funding. Wale Edun, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, has revealed this consideration. He said it while stating that Nigeria's fiscal space is exhausted. We have Mr. Wale Edun here, who was addressing a Senate committee yesterday.
Nigeria's fiscal space is exhausted. And the solution, as you probably heard earlier today, is that we have to focus on the concessional funding. We use the financial markets to take the stress, our fiscal stress down.
Mr. Edun,
no funding. But again, getting climate funding or no funding. But again, getting climate funding or getting concessional funding, which is soft loans, it's just one way of getting external funds from the international market. And concessional loans are less, they have less conditionalities. They are easier to repay and with a longer repayment period. But the issue I have with it personally is that from an economic standpoint, if you do get loans for climate change activities or climate change action, you have to make sure that you spend that money on exactly what you've gotten it for. And the only way I see it happening, considering the budget line items, would be regarding like the transitional fuel, like natural gas. So, more importantly, budget transparency and how the government does spend this money, if they do get it, is more important. Right now, Nigeria is really on edge and at the crossroads. It's very obvious that the government is very lean on revenue, and they need as much income as they can get. And at every opportunity, the goal is to positively anchor investor sentiment. And the only way to do that right now is to ensure that the government is fiscally responsible, monetary policy is credible. And by that, I think it all falls on the law of being transparent with whatever funds that you're getting and how you intend to spend it. And when you're spending it, what are you exactly spending it on? And the progress report on it. So the government right now has to do a whole lot of job in terms of positively anchoring investor sentiment. They have to bring in a lot more funds than whatever climate fund funding that they're looking at.
Now, Soluwale, considering the fact that there's still much debate going on regarding the fund, is it wise to depend on it right now?
I would say no. Right now, the government definitely has to spread on whatever external funding that they're looking at. Nigeria is not the first to be at this position of dire fiscal. I won't say it's a crisis, but I would say we are really in need of getting as much funding as we can get. So we have to spread our tentacles wide, and getting concessional syndicated loans are one way to look at it. So it doesn't have to be a climate funding that we would get, right? Any fund or any external borrowing that we should be able to get to help us, it's supposed to be easy for the government to repay. Interest rates right now globally are very high, so the expectation that fund we're going to get will be able to ease our debt service burden. If you look at the budget line item, debt service repayment is actually the highest in terms of what the government has been paying so far, and compared to the principal of the loans that we currently have, the interest rate on those loans are actually what the government is really servicing right now. The principal payments are almost nothing compared to the debt service payment. So right now, any loan that the government needs to get has to be very low on interest payments, and that's why they're considering concessional loans like a climate fund. But again, I'm saying the priority does not have to be a climate funding. What we need to do is spread our tentacles wide to get as much concessional loans as possible. We also need to consider probably IMF and World Bank are doing their thing when it comes to bilateral and multilateral funding. But the conditionalities attached to those loans are what I see the government is trying to avoid. Because we're already treading the path of peaceful reforms and adding any additional pain to Nigerians is what the government is clearly trying to stay away from. So that's why they're not really loud about multilateral and bilateral loans.
You know, Ms. Oluwole, it's worth saying that perhaps this climate, the loss and damage fund is coming up simply because COP28 is on its unfolding. But there are concerns. It's interesting that the minister described the fiscal space as exhausted. They've been as clear as possible regarding our finances, but the statement at this point in time is at variance with the promises that this administration made about gains by this time of the year. So I wonder what this means what it means for 2024.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe the minister making that statement is not too foreign to people like myself, simply because we've already been saying things like this. It's clear that the government, for lack of better word, is broke. So at this point in time, external funding, the money that Nigeria needs to defibrillate itself and revive the economy and resuscitate it, it's outside our borders. There are no two ways about it. It's just that there are other communicated, as the Minister of Finance. But then again, the businesses that are existing in Nigeria, the businesses that are here, going through tough business environment, they already know that the fiscal space is really exhausted. So the government actually taking the bold step to come out and say, okay, guys, this is exactly what is happening, and this is what we need to do. This is what we're planning to do. I would say that's a better way to be more transparent about what is happening with our public finances than beating around the bush. So this is one of the reasons why you would notice that we didn't see damage on stock exchange yesterday. We didn't see so much damage on the Naira yesterday. We didn't see so much damage in terms of speculative behavior and the downward investor sentiment. The key indicators to watch out, and those are the key indicators to watch out for. Whenever there is somewhat, I would say, maybe a indication from any public official like the Minister of Finance. So, and the truth of the matter is, he's not saying anything new. This is what analysts have been saying, from like time and time again, and we just need to be transparent about where we are now, and then take the necessary steps to get us out of the mess.
Ms. Oluwole, a big thank you to you for your time and your thoughts on this conversation. Our guest, Ms. Dumebi Oluwole, is an economic analyst with Steers Business, speaking to us on the Finance Minister's comments regarding accessing the loss and damage funds at COP28.
You're listening to Now Breakfast.
Political turmoil is brewing in Benue State after Governor Hyacinth Alia inaugurated 21 caretaker committee chairmen in nearly all the local government areas of the state. The appointment follows a recommendation that was made by the House of Assembly to suspend all 23 elected local government chairmen. Now, the move has resulted in uproar in some quarters, including from Senator Abba Moro, representing Benue South Senatorial District, who moved a motion in the Senate last week calling for the suspension of funds meant for local governments in Benue State. For more on this, we are joined by Peter Duru, a journalist based in Benue State. Mr. Duru, good morning.
We seem to be having trouble connecting with Mr. Duru at the moment, but we do have here a video that hit social media that caused a bit of an uproar. This was a lawmaker, Representative Agbese, who is a lawmaker in the lower chamber of the National Assembly from Benue State, where he did something quite interesting. We'll talk about it right after this. Let's play for you the audio from that video.
This is the person we want to see. This is our leader. Of course, he remains the leader of the party, he remains the father of the state. There's no doubt about it, because he's the man of fairness, the man of equity, the man of justice. And that's why we love him, and he has earned his respect. Now, whose picture is this?
This is the governor of Benue State.
Okay, and whose picture is this?
Our president.
Okay, and who is this?
Abbas, the speaker, House of Reps.
Of course, our leader here. And who's this?
Deputy Speaker, Honorable Kalu.
Okay, so today I will officially remove the portrait of this person from our office because he's not fit to be a leader. We can't follow him. If you don't have respect for democracy, you don't respect the constitution, you're not my father, you're not my brother. A preacher has no business to be in my office.
That was Honorable Philip Agbese, right? He represents, he's from Benue State, one of the lawmakers in the lower chamber of the National Assembly, where after that video, a number of political analysts hazarded a guess, right? They are essentially saying that there is political tensions between the SGF, that's George Akume, and the current governor. A lot of people see that relationship as godfather-godson relationship. There is, of course, the constitutional, the legal implications of this situation, because you have a governor who has gone through the State House of Assembly and effectively suspended 21 local government chairmen who were elected out of 23 local governments in the state. He had actually nominated 23 people to take over the affairs of the local government areas. However, 2 of them were rejected in the process of screening by the State House of Assembly. Unfortunately, it seems we're unable to connect with Mr. Duru this morning, but we will bring you more on what's going on in Benue at a later date. This is certainly something that will continue to develop over the course of the quite some time. You're listening to Now Breakfast here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. You want to stick around? We've got a new conversation coming up in just a bit.
Stay tuned to your Beyond the News station daily for our up-to-the-minute compact news bulletins from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., bringing you a wide range of local and international news from our news desk. Stay informed, stay updated on Radio Now 95.3 FM.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
The Financial Services Regulation Coordinating Committee, FSRCC, in collaboration with the National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, wishes to draw the attention of the public to the activities of illegal financial operators, IFOs, which threaten public trust and the stability of the Nigerian financial system. The general public is hereby advised to refrain from dealing with unlicensed financial operators who deceive individuals with unrealistically high investment returns. Verify the licensing status of such schemes on this website: www.cbn.gov.ng, www.nicom.gov.ng, www.pencom.gov.ng, www.sec.gov.ng. To report any suspicions of illicit financial activities, call 0700 225 5226, 0800 225 5226, or +234 817 665 6273. Announcer, FSRCC.
For top-notch analysis, friendly banter, from basketball
to use a Curry, way downtown, bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
To football.
Gomez, Jordi Alba, Lionel Messi!
Oh my goodness!
Lionel Messi!
To tennis.
Yeah. Simona Halep is the Wimbledon champion.
To Formula One.
Destiny of the championship as Sebastian Vettel wins the British Grand Prix and leads home Lewis.
Join Nira Adesanya and the rest of the crew on Now Sport every weekday at 6:10 p.m. Let's go.
The issues are all around us, but who talks about them? Law enforcement breaking the law, property owners ripping off tenants, political office holders taking the electorate for granted, or is it the plague of recurring bad policies made by the government? These are the issues. Let's talk about these and more at the Round Table. Stay locked on to Radio Now 95.3 FM every weekday as we discuss these hot topics around us on the Round Table on Now Express. The Round Table, weekdays, 5:30 p.m.
Technology is constantly evolving, and artificial intelligence is powering everything around us.
So for nations to continue to survive in the world where artificial intelligence is now everywhere around us, we must participate in governance structure in terms of how it is managed.
At Radio Now 95.3 FM, we're telling the story of the evolution of technology like nobody else can. Now that's another reason to listen to us.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
3 people at a spot, and the angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part.
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
You're listening to Now Breakfast. You're listening to Now Breakfast.
Welcome back to it. Keeping up with the National Assembly is a new conversation on Now Breakfast that features an overview of the most important bills, motions, and arguments that were made during the Tuesday and Wednesday plenary sessions at the National Assembly. Now, this segment will involve an analysis of the legislation and the lawmakers behind the various bills.
And of course, you can catch this segment every Thursdays, by the way, at 7:35 a.m. only here on Now Breakfast. And getting into it at the moment, both chambers of the National Assembly are busy with scrutinizing the budgets of the ministries, departments and agencies. The various committees have been carrying out public engagements and interactive sessions on critical things that will shape the country's economy over the next year. Now, one of the things that has been a struggle for both chambers is getting all MDA heads to comply with appearing for their budget defense in time enough to have the budget signed.
The Senate President, Mr. Godswill Akpabio, has warned all the ministries, departments and agencies of government to keep to their schedule for the defense of the allocations in the 2024 appropriation bill, which is coming before the relevant committees of the National Assembly. And as he has said, they will either do that or face dire punitive measures. But let's hear Senator Godswill himself.
Can we pass the budget in record time? A lot depends on the ministers, the MDAs, and the revenue spenders. If you don't come on time to defend your estimates, there is no way we can pass the budget on time. Plug the loopholes of leakages and wastages, and then bring more revenue so the 2024 budget will become realistic.
Now, this was Senate President Godswill Akpabio, who was essentially speaking to government officials that were present for defense.
Right.
And he's quite particular about one word for him in this period. And he says it's revenue. So it's about pulling up the nation's coffers enough to make sure that the 2024 budget actually performs accordingly. This is why it's critical for lawmakers that the heads of MDA show up, which takes us to another thing that has been eating at the ear of both chambers of the National Assembly over the last couple of days or so. The House of Reps committee that's been screening and taking a look at the NNPC budget has actually issued a warrant for the NNPC GMD Mele Kyari. Just yesterday, we had the Senate committee issue a warning as well. So here that is.
GMD of NNPC has refused to attend any invitation of the National Assembly. Failure to appear or to attend to public hearing is undermining the legislature. And we are hereby directing that within 24 hours, the Group Managing Director of NNPC Nigeria Limited should appear before the Senate Committee on Appropriation, and it should be in company of the MD or ES NUPRC. They should attend. And while coming, they should give us the total production output which has been approved for them on a daily basis.
Senator Solomon Lamilekong is on the Senate Committee of Appropriation, and he's basically saying, look, this is a timely situation. We'll get it done on time. He's basically promising that everything will move according to schedule. This is what he has to say.
We have discussed extensively so that we can still meet the 31st December, January deadline so that the president can assent the budget. So we have affect the strategy and we are ready to go. There are processes which we have to follow. Agencies will have to appear to defend their budgets, and they will come back in returns. They will, return the budget to the appropriation committee for us to collate their findings at the committee level. But this time around, what has changed is that we'll be having joint sitting of both the House of Reps and the Senate. Okay. There will be no individual agency. It will be a joint sitting between the Senate and the House. Some committees will be operating from the Senate, while some will operate from the House of Reps, so that we can still meet the deadline. Part of the directive given by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is that all ministers at this point should ensure that they are on ground to defend their budgets before the National Assembly. And I know no head of agencies or parastatals will flout that order of the president, and we are working towards that.
Right. So as you hear it, time is of the essence. We're at the end of the year, basically. Today is the 5th day, the 7th day of December. We're heading to the end of the year. January is around the corner, and Senator Lamilekong is saying, look, we need to get these things done on time. I guess that's the reason why there's a little bit of unhappiness with the NNPC's GM, because his department really is key to actualizing lots of the plans of this administration, and indeed affecting Nigeria's economy.
I think it's interesting. It's worth saying that the previous administration of Muhammadu Buhari prided themselves in being able to return the budget to a 12-year fiscal cycle. And it was something that they touted every time they were able to get the appropriations bill signed into law. And it's important that for this administration that they maintain that trend. I don't know. I can't say at the moment whether this is something they will say. They will stand up on a soapbox and say, "Oh, look, this is something to be proud of. We maintained the budgetary cycle." For many analysts, it's really nothing to take note of. It's what you're expected to do in the first place. But perhaps there is also another conversation around just the ability of the MDAs, the heads, to actually effectively defend their budgets, to convince the Senate committees that they need so and so amount. And for Nigerians, there's a place of trusting their lawmakers that they'll be able to look at a line item and say, look, this is frivolous, or this isn't frivolous, but we don't need it at the moment considering where we are.
Right. I don't know if there's enough time to debate, especially with the MDAs and the various lawmakers in charge of their committees, the relevance of certain items that have been requested for or allocated in the budget. The EFCC falls into this conversation because there is a request for an increment in the allocation as far as the 2024 budget is concerned. Now, while a lot of Nigerians might have opinions on the relevance of the EFCC, their role in our fight against corruption, or if you like, security, what is important really is the fact that if they are seeing this and saying, hey, we need a little more to get the job done, perhaps there is room to debate it. But that is where, like Nabila said, we have to trust in our lawmakers who are elected to represent the views of Nigerians and look at these demands or these requests and say, okay, this is necessary, this isn't, we can add this, we can take that out, with the overall view of ensuring that, I guess the word is our balance sheet remains balanced.
If you're just joining us, a brand new segment here on Now Breakfast, keeping up with the National Assembly. On this segment, we take a look at the ins and outs, the motions, the bills, whatever gets passed through first reading, passes as a bill and gets sent to the president's desk for signing, whatever the case may be. These are the conversations we have every Thursday at 7:35 a.m. And this morning, we've been taking a look at deliberations in both chambers of the National Assembly. House of Reps and Senate, they're taking a look at line-by-line items of budgets for MDAs. Here's an interesting bit where yesterday the Senate Committee on Appropriations was taking a look at the Ministry of Finance and also had in in attendance. This was the Minister of Finance, Wale Edu, and the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu. And they raised the issue of tax waivers. It starts off with observations by Senator Ali Undume.
We have to take bold decisions. We talk about credit, tax credit. It's an expenditure, and it should go through the National Assembly. There's no two way about that. This tax credit, so look at these illegalities, remove them tomorrow, please. Then let's move ahead. Few people are taking advantage of it. This tax credit that they collect for roads, up to now they didn't do the roads.
We have also agreed on the issue of waivers. That one, all monies be paid to the coffers of the government, and people can now apply for rebates. And as you said, yes, we're in a transition period. That the provision that was made this year in this year's budget, for us, since it's a transition period, can we half it by reducing it?
That was the Senate Committee on Appropriations, where they were digging into the decision by, for instance, the Federal Inland Revenue Service. This might be a bit of a setback for them. By the way, the head of the service was actually present, Zacchaeus Adedeji. It might be a setback for them because just very recently they did announce what is a grace period for companies to settle their tax obligations, and they've waived the interest and the penalties on those obligations. More interestingly, the previous administration was proud of the fact that there were tax waivers given and incentives given to companies that decided, look, we will work on this road if we get this tax waiver. Big questions on whether the federal government, in this case, the Minister of Finance, would see reason with what they've suggested, which is pay your taxes in full first and then ask for a rebate, and then we'll consider and give you accordingly.
Well, I don't know if it's just me, but the idea of paying your taxes first and then getting a rebate from the government sounds like a good idea. It works in some other countries. I believe that America is one of those countries that has this sort of system. Perhaps that's what will work for Nigeria. Perhaps it will help the government, make a little more money, even if it's for a short period of time before returning what is requested for to the people who have paid it. But the more important thing is that we do need money as a nation. And this particular administration has said, look, we're going to make XYZ amount from taxation. So how this plays out is something that will be of interest to us over the next few weeks. Right, that's all for keeping up with the National Assembly today. We'll return next week with another edition of it. But for now Breakfast continues in a moment with the news review.
We are intentional about the stories we tell and the language we use in telling them.
Intentional about the people we speak to and why we speak to them.
Because here at Radio Now 95.3 FM, we aren't just telling any story.
We are telling your story.
And your story is all that matters.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at a spot, and angry mob decided to burn.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part
PDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that that vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
This is Now Breakfast.
Grab a seat, pour a cup of coffee, and join the conversation on Now Breakfast. Let's go beyond the news. Let's talk facts.
First and foremost, the government will never kowtow to the threat of any group to give it conditions.
Let's discuss your opinion.
The politicians in Nigeria don't understand the principle of politics.
The day's biggest news stories.
IPOB has been covered in themselves in glory. There is nothing special about them. It's like a witch cried at night and the child died falling money.
This is the news review on Now Breakfast.
You're welcome to the news review on Now Breakfast. This morning, I should tell you that the phone lines are open. Just have them at the back of your mind. I don't know if you want to put them somewhere, but 0913 5000 953 0913 5000 953 is one of the numbers to reach us with. The other, of course, is 0901 111 1953. We're going to be beginning with the Daily Trust newspapers that carries the bold headline, Zero allocation for Mambila Power Project in 2024 budget. Zero allocation for Mambila Power Project in 2024 budget. That is, if you ask me, an interesting headline, primarily because power is an important part of every business, so the existence of every Nigerian, really. Over the last few days, we have been talking about the lack of power in some parts of the nation, but it does appear that this particular project will not be seeing an allocation for this year's budget, even though the Ministry of Power is getting a bit more money.
And this morning, joining us on the news review is our analyst, Iyengi Erimara. Hi, Iyengi, good morning. Iyengi, can you hear us? Just a moment as we try to sort out what the technical issue may be. But if you're just joining us, it's the news review. This morning, we're taking a look at the front pages of the Daily Trust and The Guardian. The lead story on the front page of The Guardian, 22,000 officers await relocation claims 7 months after quit notice. And there's actually a breakdown here of the Ministry of Police Affairs 2024 budget. The total figure coming up to 938.73 billion naira. Of that amount, 806.7 billion naira is allocated for personnel, 62 billion for overhead, 69 billion for capital projects. Ongoing assessment of police barracks, 100 million naira. Construction or provision of stations and barracks, 5.7 billion naira, while rehabilitation and repairs of stations and barracks, 1 billion naira. I believe we've got Iyengi back on the line. Iyengi, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Iyengi. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Oh, good morning.
So, I mean,
good morning.
From what you've seen, conversations so far are around the details of the 2024 budget. And both lead stories on the Daily Trust and The Guardian speak to different aspects of it. I wonder what aspect of it has caught your own attention?
Well, I think the conversations around the budgets are quite. I mean, people have the right to be upset over what they are seeing. You mentioned the police budget and repairs of the police infrastructure, and the repairs of the police infrastructure across Nigeria is less than what the VP, for example, is going to use to repair his residence, wherever it is, whether it's in Lagos or Abuja. So it just shows that the priority of the government is a little bit off with regards to our reality at this point in time. Another thing that I'm looking at is our debt servicing is still high. Debt servicing is almost the same thing with our capital expenditure. So we are still servicing very, very high amounts of debt. And when you have a debt servicing that is almost the same.
Hello, Iyengi. Oh dear. Connection problem. We'll try to.
Yeah, I'm saying we have.
Iyengi, can you? Okay, you know what, Iyengi, let's try a steadier line, right? If you're just joining us, welcome. It's the news review here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. And this morning, the things that have dominated conversations so far are around the 2024 budget. If you don't understand debt servicing, this is actually a great time to talk about it. Debt servicing is essentially servicing the interest on a loan that we've taken. So if I decide I want to borrow 500 naira from Stephen, and Stephen says, on this 500, you must pay me back 50 naira addition. Every year, debt servicing is essentially us paying off that 50 naira, or me paying off that 50 naira as we go along. And the idea is quite simple. if you're able to keep up with debt servicing, then your debtors will not have too much of a serious concern in terms of coming to reclaim the main debt itself.
Right.
But if we look at our condition as a country, right, it is still a source of concern because it means that we've not gotten to the actual figure that we borrowed in the first place.
So basically, we're paying what is on top of the debt,
Exactly.
not the debt itself.
We're paying the interest. And this is where moratoriums come into conversation, right? So when you hear of a moratorium on interest, it means that, we can calm down for a little while, say a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case may be, before we start to pay off once again. But more of a concern is how interest rates, especially if it's dollar-denominated loans,
Right.
interest rates continue to go up because our currency also continues to lose value. So these are some of the concerns, and particularly what Iyengi is mentioning around just how high our debt servicing is.
Right. Iyengi, another headline that has caught our attention, or I beg your pardon, just before we move to another headline, the idea that we're paying all this money to service our debts, does it give you any concern? I particularly am concerned about the fact that we're not paying off the loans themselves, but essentially just ensuring that we don't get into too much trouble with our creditors.
Iyengi, apologies. I think we continue to have some sort of issue. Let's try to reconnect that just a moment. Our sincerest apologies to you, our listener, on the other end. Unfortunately, we continue to deal with technical issues. But I think it's worth saying, because Iyengi referred to the budget allocation for the Vice President's Lodge, right?
Right.
So where you have 1 billion naira, according to the front page of The Guardian, 1 billion naira for the rehabilitation of stations and barracks across the country. Where you have that, the President's Lodge here in Lagos will be renovated with 5 billion naira. So will the Vice President's Lodge, 5 billion naira. The digitization of their quarters will cost 10 billion naira. Now, it's important to say that this was the explanation that the Chief of Staff to the President gave when he came out to say, look, the money that you guys are seeing, the 20.1 billion naira,
Right.
is not actually for my residents. I live in my private home. This money is for the rehabilitation of the presidential and vice presidential lodges in Lagos. Of course, this then begs the question of why, we're seeing this executed through the office of the Chief of Staff. Iyengi, can you hear us now?
Right. It's a very interesting proposition, especially as you've pointed out, what we require for the armed forces barracks is it's a little it's significantly less than what's been spent on rehabilitating the vice president and the presidential lodges. But we're back with Iyengi this morning. We apologize for the connection problems we're experiencing. Iyengi, good morning. Can you hear us now?
I can hear you now.
Fantastic. Iyengi, we're talking about the monies that have been allocated for various renovations, including a reported 15 billion naira for renovating the residences of the president and the vice president, balancing that against what is put aside to renovate the armed forces barracks.
Yeah.
Right.
The police barracks.
Beg your pardon, the police barracks.
But
The police
Iyengi, you
barracks.
were making a point earlier. Let's let you finish. That will lead us up to the headlines.
Yes, I was just saying it shows the priority. It shows where the priority of the government is at. Because most of the budget allocations you see going to the VP and the president's offices and residents is actually very high. You have some costs like food general supply, 459 million. You have food supply, sitting allowance, 205 million. You have all of this money. You have food supply, 255 million for a year. You have miscellaneous, 219 million. You have all of this money. This is not for the repairs now. This is food supply, office supplies, miscellaneous, all these monies. Some of these items, these line items, are still more than what they want to use to repair the police barracks and residences. And we know that those places they are in a state of disrepair. They are horrible. They are very, very horrible. Somebody posted a picture of some of the police stations. So many of us have seen police stations across Nigeria. They are very horrible. They've never been repaired. So it shows the priority. If you want to overhaul the police, as the president has said, you want to overhaul internal security architecture, and you want to prioritize this sector, you need to prioritize their living conditions so that they don't run away from fighting crime and start, extorting citizens. And that is what they have been doing. So the budget doesn't really say that this renewed hope of the president is actually what is going to be achieved at the end of the day. We have this high debt that we are servicing. As you said earlier, we are not really paying off our debt. We are just servicing the debt. And our debt servicing is almost the same thing with our capital expenditure. What we are using as capital expenditure for the entire year is the same thing as what we are using, 8.2 trillion for debt servicing, and we have 8.7 trillion for capital expenditure. We have 9.92 for recurrent non-debt. And from the way you see the government spending, even right now, we see that at the recurrent level, travels, overhead, the spending is, they don't spend like people that have a debt issue or a debt crisis.
Right.
They don't spend like people that need to rejig the economy or fix the economy. We are seeing that lots of businesses are going away. We need import to be able to achieve this revenue of 18.32 trillion that the president is proposing.
Right.
But if businesses are shutting down and leaving, it means that we are going to be importing more and not exporting more. So the budget is quite contradictory, and I don't see the renewed hope in anything that the president has put out there. The only thing I can see is, okay, they want to prioritize.
Inge,
okay.
I hear you, and I'm just going to put a pause in this as we want to take the news headlines. We'll come back and continue the conversation on the news review.
You're listening to Now Breakfast.
Across Nigeria, Africa, and the world, this is Radio Now News.
In the headlines this morning, first in local news, court strikes out cases against Shashure in PNID matter. National Judicial Council okays elevation of 11 justices to Supreme Court bench. Police say Kogi governorship election petition stolen by gunmen from tribunal secretary. Senate panel asks federal government to stop tax waivers concessions. In business and economy, federal government secures 1 gigawatt solar PV manufacturing plant. In showbiz and entertainment, Taylor Swift named Time Magazine Person of the Year. On the foreign scene, Israeli bombardments intensify in Gaza, and in sports, Nadal confident he will be competitive on return. These are your 8 a.m. headlines here on Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos. I am Nabila Usman. Thank you for listening. The news review continues shortly. Do stay tuned.
This is Radio Now News.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
This is Now Breakfast.
Grab a seat, pour a cup of coffee, and join the conversation on Now Breakfast.
Let's go beyond the news. Let's talk facts.
First and foremost, the government will never kowtow to the threat of any group to give it conditions.
Let's discuss your opinion.
The politicians in Nigeria don't understand the principle of politics.
Today's biggest news stories.
IPOB has been covered in themselves in glory. There is nothing special about them. It's like a witch cried at night and the child died early morning.
This is the news review on Now Breakfast.
Still on the news review this morning, we're talking budgets. The sum of 15 billion has been earmarked to go in one direction, the renovation of the residences of the president and the vice president. And it is a pale contrast between that and what is set aside in the budget to renovate the police barracks. And this morning we're speaking with pundit Inyingi Erimaha. I do apologize. You have a beautiful name, Inyingi. Welcome
Your mouth
back.
is supposed to be able to pronounce her surname better than mine.
Nabila. Yingi, good morning and welcome back to the conversation.
Thank you.
Right. So just before we went off, we were talking about the budget. You said you don't seem to be impressed with the idea that it's renewing hope.
Yes, if you look at some of the items, like I was saying, we have some items that are very worrying. I'd mentioned some of the miscellaneous being over 400 million, food supply over 200 million. You have travels for the president, 7.6 billion for travels. International travels is gulping 6.9 billion. Local travels is gulping 638 million. Yes, 638 million. For the VP, 1.2 billion for international travels. For local travels, you have 618 million. So when you look at these travels for overhead, repairs, travels, and all of this, and you're wondering, how much are we going to get as a nation from these travels? We can see what is happening in Dubai right now. So we don't see that sense of urgency with regards to managing the economy. We are seeing that these people are spending more, and maybe they might even spend more. They are going to be spending more on recurrent. We're going to be seeing more expenditure on recurrent. If you look at the budget breakdown, our recurrent is actually more than our capital, which doesn't show that we are taking this budgeting period seriously, because we need more capital projects. It keeps the nation liquid, and also it helps. The only thing I'm impressed with a little bit is the fact that there is money put aside for repairing infrastructure like roads, because the road would definitely help the economy. The roads between the south and the north, most of the roads are bad. It's hampering food supply. It's adding to inflation. Outside the other things that are like adding to food inflation, it's adding to the food inflation down south. So that if they repair that, it can fix a little bit of our problems. But I'm concerned that our recurrence is very high. Travel budget from the president's office, and he understands the debt situation that Nigeria is in. It's high. Businesses are leaving the country because they haven't fixed the macro level of things when it comes to the economy. So I'm wondering if they can actually achieve this 18.32 trillion for revenue. Because like I said, if businesses are leaving the country, it means that our import is going to increase, and we're not going to be increasing export. It's just like a projection based on businesses that are leaving. So it's not an impressive budget. It's not an impressive budget breakdown. You understand? When you say, we have increased defense budget by 10%, we should understand that there's also inflation, the exchange rate, and all of that is affected. So has the budget really increased by 10%? Are you increasing defense budget? Meanwhile, the military is mistakenly bombing Nigerians. So it's just it's a confusing time, and I can understand why people are just feeling a little bit despondent, because the budget should be interpreting where this renewed hope is going to come from. And I'm not really seeing, where this hope is going to come from. 500 million for student loans. Okay, let's see how that is going to work out. We know the student loan has been critiqued in the past. So I'm not really feeling the hope in this budget. The hope, yes, the politicians are going to get money for all these travels, for all these repairs, for all these capital projects that put money in their pockets, if you understand how contracting is done in Nigeria. But for Nigerians, I'm not seeing the hope.
Ingi, first of all, cheeky comment there, and I do understand where you're coming from. It's worth saying that your criticism of the presidency in particular are very spot on in terms of just leading by example, but I think there's also attention that needs to be given to the fact that the budgeting process is beyond just the president, right? That's why we have heads of MDAs coming out to defend what they sent across and said, this is what we need, XYZ. There's also the National Assembly's role and their ability to just say, look, this, and we were referring to it earlier, that this item might be important, but considering where we are now as an economy, we can't do it right now. This other item is frivolous. Let's kick it out, right? So I'm just wondering about how much attention we are paying to the other arms of government or the other functionaries, the other institutions of government that have contributed to this over-bloated figure beyond the presidency.
Yes, like when I think the Department of Research and Statistics, I don't know what it's called at the federal level, research statistics, planning, research, and statistics. Most of those departments are in charge of, the budget. They're the ones that submit the budget. But I think what I have noticed over time, even at the state level, is that, and looking at some of the federal budgets, there's no detailed consideration. Most of the items in the budget are repetitive. You have in your budget supply of certain things, computers, or certain items that you can actually use for 2-3 years. They keep repeating those budget items yearly. And I think sometimes it's because the ministry, departments, and agencies are not giving they're not giving what they ask for every year. So I don't think they think it's necessary to start, overhauling the budget and doing a proper, request for what you need per year. Because they don't get the full disbursement, they just copy and paste. Sometimes they use the old budget, change the dates, and just put some line budget that probably the minister or the commissioner is concerned about, knowing that at the subnational level especially, they might not necessarily get it. So that's why you don't see the budget really capturing the day-to-day, probably policy directions of even their government. You don't see it capturing the policy directions. They just put there. And you know that, I'm sorry to say, Nigeria, the way Nigeria is, budget, while we hope that our budget can capture the needs of the nation or the needs of Nigeria to solve our problems, the budget is another avenue for them to share resources among themselves, for them to put in budget items that can bring out contracts that they can get, contracts that can be given to some of their political, friends and cronies. Some is for, you helped me in my elections. Okay, I could not give you an appointment. I cannot do this. When the budgeting process comes out, there are contracts that will be given to you. So those things are actually prioritized. And, the procurement process too is also rife with, let's say, corruption and all, and it's not an open thing. It's not very, very open. It's not transparent. So procurement too has processes where some of these politicians and civil servants actually insert items that they can use to get out money from the system. So yes, it's not just the presidency, their budgeting system. We have talked about some of these things, but the process, the budgeting from the ministries, departments, and agencies is also a worrying thing. How they insert budget items that is feeding back the political class, that is feeding back the people within the civil service that understand how to get money out through procurement and all of that. That is why the budget doesn't really speak the language of Nigerians. And there is a very, very big separation between our aspiration as a country, as citizens, and of course the aspiration of the politicians and of course the civil servants that work within the budgeting process. So outside repeating budget items, you should understand that their priority will always be items that bring out money for them and bring out money for their own pockets. So that's why the system is not very open. Ideally, your budget should be open. Your budget should be open for people to contribute. We talk about participatory budgetary, where maybe people from different states can come and say, okay, this is the federal project that we want to. Ministry of Works, how can we ensure that this budget item is inserted? And then the National Assembly members who represent us are also supposed to be taking these developmental priorities from the senatorial district or some of our districts across Nigeria. But like I said, they prioritize how they can get money out of the system. Right. That is why this budget doesn't necessarily speak to our core needs as a nation.
Yingi, I hear you. And excuse me, we want to open up the phone lines now. 0913 5000 953. John joins us this morning from Lekki. John, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning, Nabila.
Hi, John. Good morning.
I was so sober listening to your analysis, and all I could think of was that the Nigerian people are entrapped. They are entrapped between the government, the legislature, the judiciary. We are just trapped in a vicious circle of ineptitude in terms of managing the economy. Because I do not see how, with all the headwinds that we can see coming, that, like Nabila suggested, that there are people who make up these projects and then it's passed. That means, does the president not sit down and scrutinize what is placed before him and say, for goodness sake, at this time, we cannot be saying we need hope. what is the significance of renovating the Vice President's Lodge in Jordan Barracks? Jordan Barracks is a relic of military oppression of Nigeria. Why should we have a Vice President's Lodge inside the army barracks? Why? By now, we should have demolished the Vice President's Lodge in Jordan Barracks and built it. Why are the politicians afraid of living among the people? Why should the Vice President's Lodge be inside an army barracks? What for? Because as far as I'm concerned, this is just an entrapment of the Nigerian people. Entrapping the Nigerian people in an economy that is built not to grow. Is built not to expand. Is built not to be progressive. And unfortunately, like I've said many times before, the APC political party has absolutely no single economic planning bone in their body. Not one single one. When we look at the PDP, we can point at certain economic milestones they achieved.
Like
the very fact that I'm talking to you
one
now.
Example, John.
I'm talking to you now with Obasanjo's GSM.
Obasanjo's GSM. I remember once upon a time there was a telco provider that, if you use their star code *1, people claimed that one was going to Obasanjo's pocket.
Right.
Whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is that there was virtually the creation of another economic platform in the telecom industry by that political party. What has this APC done?
Electricity.
John,
do you have light?
The discos are struggling, but they shall create it.
Is it your station that for some months?
Wait, off your mic. You're talking about our station now. We cannot answer you. Sorry.
No, you said light. Now I'm trying to tell you that we don't have light, but you said light.
John, I'm asking you to be coming down this morning, but thank you very much. We hear you, John. Yes.
Anybody that is coming down in this Nigeria is more or less, it's euthanasia you are doing, if you are coming down in this Nigeria of now. You are more or less just going for, have a wonderful day, everybody.
You don't look John. For trouble elsewhere.
John, take a cold drink of water. Ambassador Musibao joins us on the line. Ambassador, good morning to you.
Ambassador Musibao.
I will say good morning to you, not Nabila at all.
Hey, it's your small work. It's all right. I know you.
I just started. Yeah. Maybe the end of January. You may have used Nabila. How are you?
New Year resolutions, Ambassador Musibao. Welcome.
Yeah. For me, I think I listen to most Nigerians analysis and do analyze this budget we're introduced. We dwell more on this budget. To me, I see budget as a proposal, stamina. To me, but we forgot that we should go and wait for the minister after defending their budget. How do they implement the budget? Discussing the budget, criticize the president, criticize the budget, we just let go. Look, for some time now, maybe before January, nobody will talk about this budget anymore. Forgetting that after the House of Assembly, the Senator will still call this minister and defend all this budget. Now, this is why I believe Nigeria should go for them. How do you implement this? For Minister for Work, how many roads are you going to construct during your time with this budget? Minister for Health, how do you manage the fund made for you, I believe for you, no matter how small it is? No, Nigeria don't do that. That is why this minister under President Muhammadu for ages go away with this. Look, if an express road were not completed, Abeokuta express road, even the minister who I support, I criticize him, come from Lagos. If Abeokuta express were there, look, Nigeria did not speak on this. We go on the other side. So people talk to Somara. These have been abandoned since 1990 when Babangida left Lagos. These have been abandoned. This big project there. But when someone is coming to reactivate it, put it to use.
The conversation is not around reactivating the barracks, it's around the Vice President's Lodge.
He's there before now. You don't know where the president and the vice president.
Do you really think, Ambassador Musibao, and I'm asking this quite genuinely, do you really think that it's an important project to have now? How many presidents have we had come to Lagos and spend long enough to justify 20.1 billion naira into renovations?
Look, Nabila, let me tell you one thing. If we said, this is going to be innovated and put to use in other way.
But that's not what they're saying, is it?
It's been abandoned for a long time.
But they are not saying let us renovate and put to other use. They're saying let us renovate and come and sit down once in maybe 2 years. The president, no, let's say the vice president. For the president, this is home, so he'll probably come a little more frequently.
Look, Nabila, let me tell you one thing. You know my proposal for Nigeria before?
What's your proposal?
I want president to have a seat in all Nigerian states.
It kind of does.
Have a seat in Enugu. Stay there for 1 month. See what is going on there.
But he's not the governor of Enugu. He's the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Let's tell the truth. Yeah, I want the president to feel. So stay there.
Ambassador Musbah, you must remember that we operate a federal system of government. It's not the president's job to go and hold hands.
I know, but I want president to go around the state. Stay there.
And do what? Say, oh, Governor Mba, how far? Why are you not doing what you're doing?
I don't have a governor.
No.
We have federal something there. Look.
That's what he has ministers for, by the way.
Perhaps Ambassador Musbah's idea has some merit.
Yeah, I would love that. President to visit all the states. Stamina. So because if president, if the governor are not working, maybe a federal government there, something will be better. I would love that to happen.
That's not a federal system of government, just so you know. Let's just do communism and know we're done.
Ambassador Musbah, we are all going to agree to disagree this morning. I like your suggestions, and thank you very much for sharing them with us.
You know what? In every state, this is federal government allocation. This federal government. When the president is there, the federal something there will be put in use. That's
right. It's a good idea. Thank you very much, Ambassador Musbah. Dr. Paul is on the line. Dr. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. Thank you for holding.
Our problem will continue to be like this as a result of the weak institution we have. If you have a strong institution, budget, be what some people call annual ritual. Nothing never come out of it. Same thing. Nothing like employment. You say this budget cannot provide employment. This budget now links Nigerians out of poverty level. Because I could recall 2008 when Lula da Silva was the president of Brazil. I said, I am going to cut cost of government in Brazil. What happened after 4 years? About 20 million Brazilians were taken not even poverty level, so middle class level. That was idea. Lula da Silva, the current president now. So what do you have people that have no composure? What the after is all about, self-aggrandizement, and favoritism, planlessness, condemnation, all these things. What do you expect? Yeah, they don't say people running this country after Buhari is innocent. You can never change a system with the same people. It's not possible. Look at all these SUVs, renovation, here and there. They will get better money. If they do the right thing, are you telling me SUV of 2013 is not working now? SUV of me you bought 4 years ago. Is it not sound now? Is it not working? SUV, brand new, every 4 years you buy SUV. It's not very laughable.
Dr. Paul, maybe when the 4 years are coming to an end, they used to go and drive the SUV into a wall and batter it up. That's why we need to, fix it up for the next. Yeah, that's what happens. Even you, every 4 years, the car you're driving, you just ram it into a wall.
No matter the bad road my trap, right? I don't go for way balance and all that. It's okay. So that is the opulent life of these people. You see, because there is government, you renovate the house every 4 billions of naira. If you are not a government, will you do that? So a country where there is no accountability, you get away with it, you can't prove anybody. What do you expect?
Right. Well,
as if we are expecting change. It's not possible.
Dr. Paul. First of all, I want to say thank you very much. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. I'll be very honest. It's always a pleasure hearing from you. Thank you very much, Dr. Paul.
Thank you, Dr. Paul.
Kola Apapa is on our WhatsApp this morning. He says, I very much understand that some people are being given money for airtime to counter whatever someone said concerning the government. They call all the radio stations.
It's not a crime, Kola.
Kola, it isn't at all.
They're allowed, just as you're allowed your opinion.
Freedom of association, freedom of business relations. And you can take employment with any and everybody. Alleged relations. You can also receive payments for services that you are able to render, as long as you render said services. And that's the honest truth. You get to come back to you because there's been a lot said this morning. What are some of the things that are on your mind?
Well, the things on my mind are what we'll be talking about. The budget is not renewing hope. As you can see, there's a level of despondency. First of all, people are seeing items of the budget and they can project that it is not going to renew the hopes of Nigerians. And then fixing of power. Power is very important. I don't think that Nigeria's economy can grow in the way that we want it to grow without fixing power. So that's another thing that is concerning to me. I think that, now that power has been removed from the exclusive, I think somebody mentioned the president needs to go to the state, to I don't know, maybe help the states or something like that. But, the states have been gradually giving more responsibility. I think what we should be asking for is for the states to get more money. But sadly, the states, we tend to hold the federal to more account than we hold the states. The state governments are like presidents on their own. They are so powerful. Nobody questions how they spend money and all of that. But the states have been given more responsibility with power removed from the exclusive to the concurrent. So state governments can start working to see how they can increase power supply in their states to help the economy. There's a lot the states can do to support what the federal government is doing. Rather than say the federal government should come down, we should be looking for how to say that maybe we should start getting the federal government to restructure itself, the government of Nigeria to restructure itself, to give the states more responsibility, to be able to hold them to more higher accounts and to be able to make them to do more than they are doing. So we don't have this impasse of this is a federal road. Oh, the state government cannot work on it. Meanwhile, the road is affecting the economy, is affecting security, is affecting so much, but we are saying it's a federal road. So the physical presence of the president is not necessary, but the fact that the state itself and the federal government itself can work to ensure that all the corners of Nigeria is working is what is important, not the physical presence of the president in our different states.
You say this, and I can't help but think about the basic education fund, right? And how it's supposed to be. It's essentially counterpart funding. If the states can bring their own bits, they can access it. And yet we have a good number of our states that have not done it year on year on year, administration from administration. So, there's big questions on whether we'll be able to do this accountability system, combined accountability system, just how effective it would be. But there was something Ambassador Musbah mentioned earlier that is worth going into, which is we typically don't know the performance of a budget fully until the year has come to an end, right? Then you can say, it performed 60% or so. You also have the issue where we don't have enough information on when funds are disbursed, how much of those funds are disbursed, where they go to. So you see a line item for a capital project and you assume it should have been done, but then you discover much later that the government was not able to earn enough of the money, so they didn't even send it to the agency in the first place. So it's a very hopeful document. I wonder how we can sort of solve this issue, not so much about the revenue bit, but just Nigerians being aware that this is how much has come into the government coffers every quarter. This is how much has gone to which MDA for which project, and this is what they've done so far.
I think the one tool that can be used is the FOI. The FOI request, if you send FOI request, especially at the federal level, because I don't see most of these state governments, they do not respond to FOIs. So at the federal level, at the NDA level, if you send FOI requests to some of them, they will be able to, or they'll be compelled to respond with the information. Even the budget office will be compelled to respond with information as to what they have given to which agencies and what the agencies are doing with the money. So I think that's the one tool that can be used for that level of accountability at the federal level. At the state level, it is very important. I don't think any state house of assembly will be excited to pass or adopt the FOI Act as a law in their state. I'm not sure which state has passed it, but we should also look for how to hold the subnational governments accountable as well. There's a lot of things that go on there that just nobody cares. The stakeholders around the government, they get their money and they move on. The state people, all of us are looking at, the federal government. We attack Jonathan, we attack Buhari, now we are attacking Tinubu. Meanwhile, our state governments are spending as they like. They are taking loans. We talk about debt, but we are not talking about the subnational debt. The state governments are also taking loans, and they are not spending in a manner that that is responsible. There's no fiscal responsibility at the state levels too. So that level of accountability, I think we should also transfer down to the state levels. Because, Nigeria is a whole. We are state national, but we are a whole. What the state governments are doing at their state level is affecting the overall outlook of the country.
Right. Ingi, we're going to off your mic temporarily so that we can take a couple more calls. 0913 5000 953, 0901 111 1953. Those are the two numbers to call into the studio this morning. It's the news review. If you are there, do speak to us right now. We're ready to take your calls.
We have Emmanuel on the line. Hi, Emmanuel. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Emmanuel from Egeda. I'm fine. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
I said my name is Emmanuel from Egeda.
Yes, we can hear you. But I believe I'm getting an echo from your radio. If you can turn that down, then you've got the floor.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Very clear.
Much better.
All right, then. Well, I don't have much. I just for that budget, for me, I feel that the budget is the budget of corruption. The problem we have in this Nigeria, between us that we have average guys on the other end, and basically the whole of Nigeria, is like most of us, we deceive ourselves a lot. The worst, it is bad to deceive others, but the worst of the worst is when you now deceive. You know that this thing is clearly white, but when you get there, because of your party affiliation, because of your sentiment, because of the need for you to drive home a particular point, you go there and say, this thing is black or is not white. That's the problem of Nigeria. The thing that people are doing for us, since Nigeria is over 60 years old, have they ever passed a budget that has affected the life of an average people? If you go around the country, you'll see schools without seats. There's one primary school in my area where I was born. If rain falls like this, there will be to move to one side of the class where they at the other side, but also 3 things. That is one. Power. You mentioned earlier, they have brought which power? National grid that used to collapse how many times in a year? So there is nothing they have done. It's just unfortunate that party apologists, the government apologists, they will now come on to all the parts. One of your texter most likely put it in the right way, that they may have been paid to just twist the narrative, not between by you and me, between you and you. After the studio, don't you go outside, don't you go to the supermarket, don't you buy things. You are not living in this Nigeria. Because of the fact that maybe you are afraid of visible dog.
Emmanuel, if your hope has not been renewed, does not mean somebody else's hope has not been renewed.
Okay, I wish the rest of the people that their hope have been renewed the best to
that's the best you can do.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, thank you very much. Well, whatever your take is, whatever your thoughts are as far as the news headlines are concerned, we'd like to hear them. 0913 5000 953, 0901 111 1953.
And look, as you call in, please, I must ask this. I understand that some people's comments can trigger you and you're not pleased with it. But please, let's not toss allegations around. You can say you disagree with XYZ comment, but then move on to yours. We can share a back and forth as respectfully as possible.
David is on the line. David, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, David. Good morning.
Morning. I've heard the news headlines today, and it's discouraging. Like, if you look at some headlines in Nigeria right now, most especially security. We deal on insecurity in Nigeria. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, David.
Yes, there have been the kidnappings here and there, insecurity, addiction, and all of that. And if we should come to the budget, the 2024 budget, just look at what you said about the Nigerian Police Force budget. The amount that is being set to Nigerian Police Force and the amount that is being set for the innovation of Vice President. It's very discouraging. Nigerians are, I don't even know the words to use for Nigeria, but God will help us. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, David. We appreciate your contribution, and you do sound downcast, and I get it. Look, Ingi, so we don't have much time left, but I want to reel a series of headlines out, and then perhaps we'll just give you the chance to pick which of them are sticks out for you. So the front page of The Guardian, interesting headlines, two of them here. On page 3, President Tinubu threatens to shut public buildings denying access to PWDs. On page 6, United Nations flays Kaduna bombing as protesters storm National Assembly, demand minister's resignation. When we turn to Daily Trust, on page 4, prisoners from foreign lands working at construction sites in Nigeria, says Senate panel. And right down at the bottom, NJC recommends appointments of 11 Supreme Court justices, 32 others. So this just covers a wide range of other things that are going on in the country. Which of them sticks out for you and why?
Well, I think the persons living with disabilities access is a key issue. The International Day for Persons Living with Disabilities was a few days ago, and the president is threatening that he's going to shut down buildings. I mean, the rules are there. When you're building, when you're constructing, you must consider access for persons living with disabilities. The government is not supposed to approve. Ideally, I know they don't do that in Nigeria, but ideally, you're not supposed to. As an architect in school, you will not pass if you do not consider access for persons living with disabilities. You do that in school. But when it comes to the practice of it in our daily life, in construction, even in some government buildings, you don't see access for persons living with disabilities. So to say you're going to destroy it rather than, working to ensure that we start, including access for persons with disabilities, it's almost the same thing as what is happening in Lagos, where they give you all of this authorization to build your house and build everything. You pay all of these levies. At the end of the day, the government comes and says, oh, you build on a piece of land that is not allowed for you to build. You build on this. Meanwhile, they are giving you all of this.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Oh dear. My apologies.
Hello?
Right, Inyegi, we hear you, and that's actually a very salient point as regards the adherence to building codes. If you're going to build your whatever structure you're going to create, needs to have access for people with disabilities, and it's a conversation that will continue to be had until we get to the point where it's a part of our systems, our society. It's part of who we are. It's how we go about setting up our buildings across Nigeria, not just in Lagos State, which has been very serious about dealing with buildings that are put up in the wrong place. But this is a good headline with the president himself speaking about persons with disabilities. He has appointed someone to his cabinet who has a disability and insisted the focus must be on ensuring inclusivity across the board. Right, that's all for the news review today. Inyegi, would like to say a very big thank you to you for joining us, but we just want to take your final thoughts before we wrap this up this morning. Inyegi, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, I'm just hoping that before the budget is passed, I'm hoping that some reviews can be done. I'm hoping that Nigerians can channel their anger to more constructive engagement, use FOIs, engage with your state and national House of Assembly members to be able to reflect your concerns in the budget, rather than for us to just sit on our backs and at the end of the day we see things happening, we are so upset and we just start, talking. Let's take some of our talk to action, and there are ways to engage. Everybody thinks about protest and this. There are ways to engage before we get to that protest level. So maybe we should start writing FOIs, start writing to ministry, departments and agencies and our representatives and write our priorities so that they can make those insertions. They can make our aspirations part of the budget instead of leaving the process to the politicians to, just take charge of everything. We need to include ourselves. Participatory budgeting is a thing. And if the government will not open the space, we need to start knocking on those doors to make our own contributions.
Right. Well, beautiful thoughts there, and I couldn't have said it better myself. That's all for the news review this morning on Now Breakfast. But the show doesn't come to an end just yet. We have Aramide Folorunsho with Business Now coming up in just a moment.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at a spot and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that our vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
From the Central Business District of Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, this is 95.3 Business Now.
A warm welcome to the program, everyone. I am Aramide Folorunsho. It's Thursday, the 7th of December, and these are the business quick takes. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has signed 2 agreements to deliver natural gas to the domestic and international markets in a bid to boost gas usage and enhance Nigeria's revenue from gas. The deals signed on the sidelines of the ongoing UN Climate Change Conference in Dubai include an agreement with Wilson Heavy Industries Company Limited for the development of a floating LNG project in Nigeria, and another deal between NNPC Prime Energy Limited with SDP Services for a supply, installation and commissioning. The Corporate Affairs Commission says it has commenced the implementation of the requirement of 100 million naira minimum paid-up capital for companies in Nigeria that has foreign participation. The commission responsible for the registration of companies in Nigeria says existing companies with foreign participation that have less than 100 million paid-up capital must ensure compliance with the new requirements by June 2024. The CAC further says it will commence proceedings for the compulsory winding up of any organization that fails to comply with the directive in line with the Companies and Allied Matters Act of 2020. Consumer goods giant Procter & Gamble has announced plans to transition its Nigerian operations to an import-only model, effectively dissolving its on-ground presence in the country. The chief financial officer of the group, Andrew Shorten, explained that it is difficult to do business in Nigeria as a dollar-denominated organization, and the macroeconomic reality in Nigeria is responsible for its strategic decision. Nigeria's Central Bank Governor Olayemi Cardoso has approved the CBN's reviewed service charter policy document. And the 34-page document serves as a guide for customers to report service failure, and the policy also spells out the bank's commitment to providing citizen-friendly governance. Well, coming up after the break, the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System cracks down on unlicensed deposit-taking fintechs as cyber fraud increases. Join us again, everyone.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
People at a spot and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that our vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. And we go beyond the news.
Connect with us now via our social media channels. Facebook.com/Radio Now 953FM.
We're on Twitter too. Connect with us there and get involved.
At Radio Now 953FM. 953FM. Like what we do? Share it on your socials and tell everyone.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram
at Radio Now 953FM. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
We are Radio Now 95 FM Lagos.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
Welcome back to Business Now. The Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, or NIBS, has raised concerns over unlicensed financial services companies posing as deposit-taking institutions, indicating a push for increased regulatory enforcement following fraud and lapses in customer verification processes by payment providers. By the latest NIBS directive on Wednesday, fintech companies such as Opay, Kuda, PalmPay, Carbon Bank, Paga, PiggyVest, Palm Credit, and a host of others will be taken down from phone transfer channels. Sadiq Safiriyu is a senior research analyst at Meristem Securities, and he joins me now to discuss this latest banking transactions cleansing exercise as announced by NIBS. We thank you for coming through, sir, and a good morning to you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. What do you make of this directive from NIBS?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think it is very important. This call and this conversation is actually fun because it helps to shed more light on the conversation or topic. I think there is a sort of misinformation. So the directive actually addresses the switching companies, the payment solution service providers, and the super agents. And these companies or these institutions, right from time, they do not actually have the license to profit, which is in line with what NIBSS, the circular they have put out. All right. So there are some companies that have been, mentioned to be affected or are actually not affected. I mean, I hear the likes of Opay, PalmPay, Kuda, Carbon. Most of these companies are actually not affected because the license they hold permits them to hold deposits. So most of them actually do have the microfinance bank license, and so for these kind of institutions, they are allowed to hold deposits. So majorly, what the circular is saying is that for companies that only have license as switching companies, or PSSBs or super agents, all they have to do is to serve as intermediary between the banks and maybe merchants or between the banks or maybe card providers and all of that. They are only meant to process flows. They are not meant to hold deposits. So that's what it is saying. It's saying that if someone wants to make transfer to some switching companies, in these cases, we have the likes of eTransact, we have the likes of Flutterwave, we have the likes of AbariPay. Some of these, companies do not have a license to actually hold deposits. So what it's saying is, don't hold deposits. Let the banks or the deposit money, banks should be in. Yeah, let them be in charge of that. All you can do is just make transfer, be the intermediary. What your license permits you to do, just that. You don't have to go beyond it. There are some. So what is happening is those switching that used to be on maybe when you're trying to use your mobile app to transfer, you wouldn't see them anymore because they don't have the license to hold deposits. All they can do is just serve as intermediary.
Okay.
So you want to pay on InterSwitch, just pay. You don't have to hold deposit, just pay like that if you want to do something.
Clear enough. But why is this directive very important in terms of, because I'm looking at it in terms of consumer protection in the banking and fintech sectors in Nigeria?
Yeah, so after having laid that foundation, that is important for companies that do not have the license to do that. It is important because when we are looking at risk management, you don't want someone that is not capable or that has not been licensed or affirmed to be capable to hold their money. So it is important for consumers. It's just like keeping your money in a place where or where you don't know that they are capable of holding the money. Just like investing in a company that doesn't even have sufficient capacity to repay. So for consumer protection, I think this circular actually comes in a very good time to say that, it doesn't mean they are going to go away with your money, but the people that have the capacity, that have necessary infrastructure, that have, for these deposit money banks, that they even have insurance. There is the NDIC, the Nigerian Deposit Insurance Corporation, that gets to insure the deposits of these banks. But you can't. That provision is not made for these switching companies, for the PSSBs. So for consumers, you don't want to take that risk of putting your deposit there, and if there is any failure, you wouldn't get back your money because there is no insurance or those infrastructures, those provisions have been made. So in terms of consumer protection, this is just coming at a very, very very important thing.
Also, let's also consider something that's quite important. Do you think this latest move by NIBSS would in any way disrupt access to finance in the rural parts of Nigeria?
Okay, I struggle to see the difference it makes really because, as I said again, most of the popular names regulation that people use, majorly in the rural area, they are not, they are barely affected or they are not affected at all because they have the license to do that. So as I mentioned, much more like InterSwitch, much more like InTransact. Those people in that line, they're just, okay, let's say for instance, you want to pay NEPA bill, you want to pay for DSTV, and you're trying to pay online. You get to see InterSwitch, or you get to see Flutterwave, you get to see them, they just process it. And again, even some of these companies, some of these Flutterwaves, I need to mention that they also have provision that is made. So for them, some of them open a virtual wallet with banks. So for instance, PiggyVest, if you go on PiggyVest, they have a certain wallet. When you see that, you will see that you have an account number designated for you. But that account number doesn't bear PiggyVest. It bears Bema Bank. Or it's, there is so for that, it means that they have a virtual wallet with a deposit money bank and it's safe. So with that, it is not affected. So there are still provisions that allow you to run it properly. What we are just saying is let the people that have the capacity be able to. So for these companies, if they want to do that, they could open a virtual wallet with a bank. You understand? Where the deposits can be put and then there can be proper flow of funds.
All right. Sadiq Safiri, Senior Research Analyst at Meristem Securities. Thank you as always on the show. I do have a great day ahead.
Thank you very much for having me. Do have a great day.
Okay, let's give you a snapshot of Wednesday's trading day. We're starting with the equities. The stock market in Nigeria extended Tuesday's gain by a whopping 305.61 billion naira gain on total market valuation of NGX following bargain hunting. In UBA, 3.29%, MTN 0.25%, JITCO also recorded 0.51%. We've got FBN Holdings 9.91%, Zenith Bank 3.44%, and Access Corp, ROD 9.04%. The NGX main index rose by 0.78%, taking the index return to a positive 40.11%. Well, across Frontier African markets, the Egyptian main index fell sharply by 1.69%. The Kenya Bourse reported 0.92% decline. Here in West Africa, the regional exchange in Abidjan was positive by 0.11%, while the Ghana stock market slumped by 0.08%. However, if we look at the Southern African region, the Zimbabwe stock market posted a 0.20% gain. The JSE in South Africa bounced back with a 0.25% increase at the close of trading. So we're back on Broad Street. Overnight lending rate among commercial banks in Nigeria increased by 68 basis points to 16.7%. And the Nigerian Treasury Bill secondary market traded on a bearish note as average yield expanded by 16 basis points to 11.1%. That's as the central bank allotted a total of 604.34 billion naira in 3 dated treasuries, way above the 121 billion naira that the regulator planned to roll over. Trading in the FGM bond secondary market was bullish. The average yield contracted by 3 basis points to 15.6%. Total debt papers on FMDQ Securities Exchange was 116 billion naira. That's on Wednesday. Well, let's check foreign exchange. The Naira Sky fall by a whopping 15.2% on the US dollar to 951 naira 22 kobo against the dollar, apparently at the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Market. So oil prices recouped some of their losses in early Asian trading but remained at the lowest level since June after falling in the previous session on high U.S. crude output and gasoline inventories. Brent crude futures rose 32 cents or 0.43% to $74.62 a barrel. The U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 33 cents or 0.48% to $69.71 a barrel. In the previous session, the market was spooked by data showing U.S. output remains near record highs, as even though inventories fell. That's what analysts at ANZ said in a note. Some of the bearishness was also a result of higher product inventories. The ANZ analysts also said that likewise. Well, that's your business now for today, Thursday, the 7th of December. I am Army Day Florenshaw, and we thank you for listening. It's bye for now.
This is 95.3 Business Now.
We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a trader operating a chain of supermarkets. I engage in monthly comfortable contributions with my insurance company. It gave me the opportunity to inject capital into my business during peak periods and reap handsome returns. I never knew that an insurance company can be that helpful. Kudos to Mutual Benefits Assurance for such innovative and business-sustaining insurance products.
Take advantage of the delightful offers and experience the peace that comes with knowing that you can count on Mutual Benefits Assurance to protect you and what you value the most. Call Mutual Benefits Assurance today on 0905 474 4444 to get started and enjoy these and more, or visit www.mutualng.com for more information. Mutual Benefits Assurance, creating and protecting wealth.
Stay tuned to your Beyond the News station daily for our up-to-the-minute compact news bulletins from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., bringing you a wide range of local and international news from our news desk. Stay informed, stay updated on Radio Now 95.3 FM. You're listening to Now Breakfast.
It's still Now Breakfast here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. My name is Nabila Usman, and this morning breakfast continues into the next hour, expecting Africa in perspective. Coming up next, our guest is Eric Naki, and the conversation is around pause, because there's a way that you pronounce it. The Xhosa people of South Africa. I think I got that right. It's Xhosa people. And yes, when you hear that, it's very deliberate. It's a Xhosa people of South Africa. I remember when I first saw that word, the name, I thought it was Xhosa people of South Africa. And I've heard people say other versions because it's spelled Xhosa. I think in the language, there's like 5 critical clicks. And you get a sense of that in the coming conversation. Hopefully, Mr. Naki will share those clicks and with us, and then we kind of get how it is pronounced. And if you're laughing, you should not laugh, because we are a people with cultures that have be, and all of those other things that make people think twice about whether they're going to pronounce the name or not. So yeah, that's what to expect on Africa in Perspective. This is still Now Breakfast on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. My name's Nabila Osman. Up next, the news at 9.
Stay tuned to Your Beyond the News Station daily for our up-to-the-minute compact news bulletins from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 4 p.m. and 6 p.m., bringing you a wide range of local and international news from our news desk. Stay informed, stay updated on Radio Now 95.3 FM.
Across Nigeria, Africa, and the world, this is Radio Now News.
The National Judicial Council, NJC, has recommended the elevation of 11 justices to the Supreme Court bench. The legal body took the decision at its meeting that was held in Abuja yesterday. The council, in a statement made available by the Director of Information, Soji Oye, said it considered the list of candidates that was presented by its interview committee, and at the end of deliberations decided to make the recommendation. The names on the list include Justice Jummai Hannatu Sanke, Justice Chidiebere Nwoma, Justice Chioma Egondu Nwosueheme, Justice Haruna Simon Zamani, Justice Mo Asemo Adumain, Justice Obande Festus Ogbuinya, as well as Justice Stephen Jonah Ada, Justice Habib Adewale Abiru, Justice Jamilu Yammama Tukur, Justice Abubakar Sadiq Umar, and Justice Muhammad Baba Idris. Elsewhere in the news this morning, the Senate Committee on Appropriations has urged the federal government to stop tax waivers and concessions already granted to corporate entities. The panel said the country is losing huge revenue to tax waivers and incentives. It, however, suggested that all companies should pay their taxes in full to the government coffers and then request for a rebate. The chairman of the committee, Senator Adeola Olamileko, and other members made the recommendation during an interactive session on the 2024 budget, which was attended by the Minister of Finance, Wale Edu, and the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu. According to Mr. Edu, Nigeria has lost about 3 trillion naira to tax waivers this year. In business and economy, the federal government has signed a memorandum of understanding for the establishment of a 1 gigawatt solar manufacturing plant in the country as part of its efforts to provide reliable energy to the people. The Nigerian company Infrastructure Corporation, Infracore, signed the agreement with Solarge BV of the Netherlands and the African Green Infrastructure Investment Bank at the just concluded at the ongoing 28th session of Conference of Parties COP28 in the United Arab Emirates. The Chief Executive Officer of Infracore, Dr. Lazarus Angbaso, said the objective of the project is to revolutionize Nigeria's energy sector and elevate the economy to $1 trillion through sustainable and climate-resilient infrastructure. During the summit, the Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, noted that the current power situation in the country is dire, with insufficient transmission infrastructure, limited distribution capacity, and various challenges hindering generation.
And now, international news.
Israeli troops and Hamas militants battled yesterday in house-to-house fighting for control of Khan Yunis, Gaza's second biggest city, as Palestinian civilians faced increasing difficulty finding shelter and access to humanitarian aid. Israel's military said yesterday that it had carried out airstrikes on about 250 targets in the Gaza Strip during the past day, in some of the heaviest fighting of the 2-month-old war. The United Nations reported a significant intensification of Israeli bombardments of Gaza since Monday afternoon, along with the intense ground fighting as well as increased Hamas rocket fire targeting Israel. Hundreds of thousands of Gazans continue to flee to the west and south of Khan Yunis, including to Rafah, which is the border with Egypt. The United Nations says shelters there are far beyond capacity, forcing the displaced Palestinians to sleep in the streets or in empty lots.
Sports News.
Rafael Nadal yesterday insisted he will be competitive when he returns to professional tennis next month after enduring nearly a year out of action due to injury. The 22-time Grand Slam champion, who has undergone surgery twice in 2023 after struggling with a hip injury, says next year will likely be his last season before retirement. He announced last week that he would make his comeback at the Australian Open warm-up event in Brisbane, which runs from January the 1st to the 7th. Nadal last played at the Australian Open in January, losing in the second round to American Mackenzie McDonald. He originally hoped to be back in time for the clay court season and Roland Garros, where he is a 14-time French Open winner. However, he had to end his campaign early. The 37-year-old Spaniard has slipped to 664th in the world rankings while sidelined. And that's the news at 9 here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. You can listen online from anywhere in the world at www.thisisradionow.com. Simply click on the Listen Live button and you can take us with you wherever you go. Connect with us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/This Is Radio Now and on all other platforms at Radio Now 953 FM. Share your thoughts and opinions with us on WhatsApp to the WhatsApp line 0809 682 2595. I am Nabila Usman. Thank you for listening. Now breakfast continues shortly. Do stay tuned.
This is Radio Now News.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
Kwamitin kula da daidaita harkokin tsarin kuɗi wato FSRCC tare da haɗin gwiwar hukumar yada labarai ta ƙasa wato NBC na mai ƙoƙarin yin gargaɗi ga mutane domin su ƙaurace wa 'yan damfara da ke damun al'umma wato IFOs wanda hakan haɗari ne ga jama'a da kuma tsarin hada-hadar kuɗaɗen Najeriya. Ana mai shawartar gaba ɗaya mutane da su guji yin mu'amala da masu gudanar da harkokin kuɗaɗe marasa lasisi. Ku tabbatar da kun yi binciken matsayin lasisin waɗannan kamfanonin da tsare-tsarensu akan waɗannan yanar gizon. www.cbn.gov.ng, www.nicom.gov.ng, www.pencom.gov.ng, www.sec.gov.ng domin kai korafi ga duk wanda ake zargi ga wannan haramtacciyar harka zuwa ga hukumomin doka da suka dace. A kira 0700 225 5226 0800 225 5226 ko +234 817 665 6273 FSRCC.
We are Africans. For years, our story has been told by outsiders, dissected and created to pull us apart. Now, it's time to come together as a people, shape the narrative, tell the stories from the African perspective. Tune in to Africa in Perspective every week as we bring Africans to the table to analyze the issues and prefer solutions. Africa in Perspective. Thursdays 9 a.m. and 2:15 p.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. Connect with us now via our social media channels. Facebook.com/RadioNow953FM.
We're on Twitter too. Connect with us there and get involved.
At Radio Now 953FM. 953FM. Like what we do? Share it on your socials and tell everyone.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram
at Radio Now 953FM. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Be a part of our online community on Facebook. Like our page on www.facebook.com/This is Radio Now to join every conversation on air and get up-to-date news information on the go.
Follow us on social media. Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Radio Now 953 FM.
Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
3 people at a spot, and angry mob decided to burn.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part
GDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that our vote does not count. If your vote does not count.
We bring you the story within the story, and that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
Be a part of our online community on Facebook. Like our page on www.facebook.com/This is Radio Now to join every conversation on air and get up-to-date news information on the go.
Inside the home our parents once shared is a stairwell. Inside the stairwell is a portrait. Inside the portrait is our family. My mother is sat back straight, clad in her double wrapper and red blouse. Gilly sits on her head like a crown. Left hand is perched on her thigh, ring finger gleaming into the frame. Our father is next to her. His grin is wide. My siblings, a halo around me. This photograph is perfection. I recall how we would alternate days between play wrestling and our mother's screams leaking through the keyhole of our parents' bedroom. As children, we learned very quickly to choose pain over disgrace, so my brother would throw his comic book to the side, muzzle my mouth shut as the words, "Leave my mommy alone," would eat through the spaces between his fingers. They said our parents were going through a midlife crisis, but nobody told us that we would be left in a bloodbath. And 25 years later, inside the same home our parents once shared, this portrait still lines the stairwell where I once saw my mother rolling down like tumbleweed. The memory of our echoing living room betraying my 8-year-old voice still refuses to leave me. My brothers and I exchanged childhood stories like we were war veterans, and I knew what it was to be on the front lines before I got my first training bra. The women in our family became masterful at swallowing pain and chose to keep smiling photographs instead. I wish they had known that neither their piety nor a portrait could save a family. At the dinner table, I ask our mother why she never took the portrait down. And she tells me in our language, "Eyai boke meyomedepki song." So they don't say I was impregnated by the ground.
That was Family Portrait by poet Wana Wana. And now it is Africa in Perspective.
We are Africans. For years, our story has been told by outsiders, dissected and created to pull us apart. Now, it's time to come together as a people, shape the narrative, tell the stories from the African perspective. Tune in to Africa in Perspective every week as we bring Africans to the table to analyze the issues and prefer solutions. Africa in Perspective. Thursdays 9 a.m. and 2:15 p.m. on Radio Now 95.3 FM, Lagos.
Welcome to Africa in Perspective, where we bring you in-depth analysis of the biggest stories across the African continent. I am Stephen Imejegu, and also on this program, every week we share with you interesting facts about African countries. But first, the summary of the news stories making headlines across the continent of Africa. We begin with news that dropped less than 10 minutes ago. A state of emergency has been declared in the Seychelles after a massive explosion at an industrial zone on the main island Mahé, as well as flooding. Seychelles President Wavel Ramkalawan has ordered all citizens except essential workers to stay at home. A number of people have been injured. The blast happened at a construction and quarrying company where explosives were being stored, leaving a trail of devastation in the industrial zone of Providence. The international airport was also damaged despite being 4 kilometers or 2.5 miles away. Schools are closed and the only movement allowed is into and out of the holiday islands. Mauritania and Chad have paved the way for a dissolution of the G5 Sahel alliance that was created in 2014 to tackle jihadism and other challenges in the sub-region. This follows the withdrawal of 3 other members, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. A joint statement from Mauritania and Chad noted that this withdrawal is following the decisions of Burkina Faso and Niger to withdraw from the sub-regional alliance, and this entire situation began with the early announcement of Mali's withdrawal from the G5 as well. Now, Article 20 of the Convention states that the G5 Sahel can be dissolved at the request of at least 3 member states. A communique announcing the withdrawal of Mali on Saturday stated that in Burkina Faso stated that the military regime in that country did not expressly request the dissolution of the G5 Sahel alliance. However, the fate of this alliance, which was in a bad way even before the Malian junta announced its withdrawal in 2022, appears to be sealed. The member countries had set up a joint military force in 2017, but the effectiveness of this force was very limited. The violence continued to spread in the region, leaving thousands of civilians and combatants dead and millions displaced. It has strongly contributed to political instability, as well as seen a succession of coups de force. Now, since the creation of the G5 Sahel, the sub-region has seen the military take over in Mali in 2020, Burkina Faso in 2022, and Niger Republic in 2023.
Shaping the African narrative. This is Africa in Perspective.
And still keeping it in the Sahel region, the military regimes of Mali and Niger Republic have announced that they are denouncing their double taxation agreements with France, continuing the unraveling of ties with Paris and the tightening of relations between these two African countries. In a joint statement this week, the governments of the two Sahelian countries cited, and I quote, France's persistent hostile attitude against our states and the unbalanced nature of these agreements, which cause a considerable loss of revenue for Mali and Niger. The agreements will expire within 3 months. Now, the practical implications of these denunciations are not immediately clear, but the website of the French tax authorities indicates that France has been linked with Mali and Niger respectively since 1972 and 1965 by conventions that tend to avoid or eliminate for Niger double taxation and to establish rules for reciprocal assistance in tax matters. The agreements cover personal and corporate income tax, inheritance tax, and registration duties. Now, this denunciation is the latest act in the unraveling of the relationships of Mali and Niger with their former colonial masters. Since the military seized power in Bamako in 2020 and Niamey in 2023, there's been a gradual step back, and this, you could say, is the highest escalation in their dissolution. The authorities of yet another Sahelian country whose military took over in 2022, Burkina Faso, had already denounced the tax treaty with France just a few months ago. Now, these three countries, faced with the challenges of jihadism and similar problems, have come together this year, and their foreign ministries have just proposed the creation of a confederation.
Your window to Africa today. This is Africa in Perspective.
And one of the biggest stories on the African front has to do with the infamous UK refugee treaty that involves Rwanda. Now, Rwandan opposition politician Victoire Ingabire has criticized the asylum deal between Rwanda and the United Kingdom. She tells the BBC that it will be challenged in British courts once more unless it addresses human rights abuses. In an effort to address concerns about the UK's plan to deport some asylum seekers to Rwanda, the two governments signed a new treaty on Tuesday. Now, as one of Rwanda's most important development partners, the UK should push the East African country to improve its human rights record. Victoire Ingabire is a long-standing opponent of the Rwandan President Paul Kagame, and she tells the BBC that it is necessary to address Rwanda's human rights challenges. Ms. Ingabire said that concrete measures the British government could ask for are the release of jailed opposition politicians as well as journalists and social media commentators who have been critical of the government. Now, she also added that Rwanda has limited resources to provide a durable solution to asylum seekers sent to that country by the United Kingdom, and that the new treaty won't dissuade immigrants from crossing the Channel because those sent to Rwanda won't find the freedom that they are looking for. Now, the Rwandan government has said it has a long history of welcoming refugees, many of whom it claims have successfully settled in that country.
Bringing context to every story, helping you understand why and how it concerns you, taking you closer to stories in Africa, analyzing and prescribing to our shared continental problems. This is Africa in Perspective.
Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, the Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick has resigned just a few hours after the Prime Minister tabled a bill to save the Rwanda deportation policy. The Tory MP for Newark also cited strong disagreements with the government policy. He said he did not think that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's emergency legislation to revive the stalled asylum plan would end the merry-go-round of legal challenges that have so far paralyzed the scheme. Now, in his resignation letter to the Prime Minister shared on X, he said, and I quote, "In our discussion on the proposed emergency legislation, you have moved somewhat towards my position, for which I am grateful. Nevertheless, I am unable to take the currently proposed legislation through the Commons, as I do not believe it provides us with the best possible chance of success." End of quote. Now, Jenrick described the bill as a triumph of hope over experience. He added that he cannot continue in his position when he has strong disagreements with the direction of the government's policy on immigration.
Shaping the African narrative. This is Africa in Perspective.
It is some bad news out of Ethiopia, as 5 civilians have been killed in the Amhara region after a drone strike hit an ambulance, according to reports that witnesses have forwarded to the BBC. 3 other people, including the head of a local hospital, were injured in the incidents that happened in Wogel Tena town in northeastern Amhara. The attack occurred last week but was only confirmed on Wednesday this week due to communications restrictions that were imposed by the local authorities. The driver of the ambulance that was hit, a pharmacist, and nearby construction workers were amongst those killed. The federal forces are said to be using drones to target local militias as the violence that broke out in April continues to escalate. Last month, the UN said it was troubled by drone strikes hitting civilian targets in Amhara. It has also said that several people were killed in an attack on a school compound and a bus station.
Africans leading the way. People rich in culture and beauty. Everything you should know about your home. This is Africa in Perspective. The African narrative. This is Africa in Perspective.
You're welcome back to Africa in Perspective. This week on Africa in Perspective, we resume our exploration of cultures on the African continent, and we have one of our brothers from the South African nation that is also referred to as the Rainbow Nation, perhaps because of its many cultures that are resident there. We speak today with Mr. Eric Naki. Mr. Naki, good morning, and thank you for speaking to us on Africa in Perspective.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Right. My friend of mine was teasing me in the studio this morning about my pronunciation of the tribe that you come from. Now, it's spelled as Xhosa. Can you give us the proper pronunciation of this word?
The word is Xhosa.
Xhosa. All right.
Yes. You got it right.
Oh, I've been working hard on that one. Right, but to jump
I know those clicks are difficult.
They are difficult. So I guess the first question really for me is, I hear that it's not just one click in the Xhosa language. Are there are some others? Can you walk us through them very quickly?
Yeah, there are others that are available, which means the polecat is rolling itself in the grass.
You know,
the polecat is rolling itself in the grass. Those clicks is some of the songs that the famous singer Miriam Makeba used to sing. She sang in those clicks. If you know some of her songs,
the click song,
you know, the click songs, they were sung by Miriam Makeba.
Right.
You know, they come from the Xhosa. She's a Xhosa, so they come from the Xhosa language.
Right. So where can we typically find the Xhosa people in South Africa?
The Xhosas are more situated, living mainly in the southeastern part of the South Africa, which is called the Eastern Cape. But some of them are in the Western Cape. So it used to be the entire what used to be called the Cape Province. It used to be the province of the Xhosas. But after the 1994 democracy, that province was divided into 3 provinces. So the majority of Xhosas are in the Eastern Cape, which is southeast of South Africa.
Right. As far as famous people are concerned, I believe that the great Madiba is part of the Xhosa people. My friend Yaya Mwanda is one as well. Can you give us examples of famous people from this particular culture?
This culture, you will be surprised that in fact, almost all the pioneer leaders of the ANC and the liberation movement as a whole, all other political parties were coming from the Eastern Cape. Madiba, Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, Walter Sisulu, Robert Sobukwe from the PAC, and then Steve Biko from the Black Consciousness Movement. All those leaders that were leading the struggle against apartheid, they were originally mainly from the Eastern Cape, but they were joined by others from other provinces, and they were involved in this. Very famous people, Miriam Makeba, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, but they all moved mainly to the province Gauteng, to Johannesburg, as a part of seek greener pastures, perhaps. Yes.
Okay, so I believe that the current Springboks captain Siya Kolisi is also, I guess, is the most famous sporting Xhosa man at the moment.
Yes, he is he's a Xhosa. He comes from the Eastern Cape, where the Xhosa people are. He comes from Port Elizabeth, which is now called Gqeberha.
Okay.
Gqeberha.
Yes. That's going to be a difficult one for me.
It's difficult because it's also a click.
Right.
You know, this click song, these click words come from the Khoisan. The Xhosas and the Khoisan, this is the people that some people call Bushmen.
Right.
But they are progressively called Khoisan. So they speak in cliques. So we inherited that from them because we are part of the Khoisan as the Xhosa people.
So as far as numbers are concerned, is it possible for you to tell me how many Xhosa people are in South Africa at the moment?
The Xhosas are the second largest ethnic group in South Africa, of the South African 60 million population. So the Xhosas are the second largest after the Zulus. The Zulus are the majority. They constitute about 45% of the population, the Zulus. Right. The Xhosas may constitute about 36% of the population. And the rest, who are the minorities, they share the remaining 20%.
Right.
So the Xhosas are the second biggest, and them and the Zulus are more related because they are part of the Nguni tribe. The Nguni ethnic group, which is comprised of the Zulus, the Xhosas, the Ndebeles, the Swatis, the Shangaan, and basically those are the Swatis. Yes, those are they constitute the Nguni, and Xhosas are part of that. And we mainly situated along the east coast of South Africa. The Xhosas and the Zulus are on the east coast of South Africa, and the Ndebeles and others are more inland. Ndebele and Swatis, they are more inland, but the Xhosas and the Zulus are on the coast.
Right. Well, I'll definitely be visiting the Eastern Coast next year. Mr. Naki, thank you very much for speaking to us and sharing a bit about your culture with us here on Africa in Perspective.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. That is our guest, Mr. Eric Naki, a Xhosa man. He was speaking to us about the culture of the Xhosa people in South Africa. And now from this conversation, we jump into 3 amazing facts about Africa. We're staying in South Africa for this one.
Shaping the African narrative. This is Africa in Perspective.
Did you know that the most luxurious train in the world is found in South Africa? It is called the Rovos Rail. Still on amazing facts about South Africa, did you know that the only manufacturer of the Mercedes-Benz C-Class right-hand drive cars is none other than South Africa? And finally, the lion, the cheetah and the wildebeest are 3 of the 5 fastest animals in the world, and they all live in South Africa. Well, now you know. And for more amazing facts about Africa, join me on the next edition of Africa in Perspective. But that is all for this week. I'll see you next time around. My name is Stephen Imediegu. Bye for now.
Connect with us now via our social media channels. Facebook.com/RadioNow953FM.
We're on Twitter too. Connect with us there and get involved.
At Radio Now 953FM. 953FM. Like what we do? Share it on your socials and tell everyone.
Want to see some more of us? Head over and meet us on Instagram
at Radio Now 953FM. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Every second and every minute, something new happens. The news breaks.
3 people at a spot, and angry mob decided to bomb.
Everyone wants to share it, but not everyone wants to dig deep. Now that's where we come in. We bring you the news and go beyond with in-depth conversations and analysis with stakeholders.
I honestly think that the federal government on its own part has broken.
If voters or more people want to be part of that decision-making process, they need to be part
PDP is not a good measure of development anyways. We are not there yet. We need to counter the narrative of the fact that voters not count. If their voters not count.
We bring you the story within the story. And that's what makes us tick. We are Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos, and we go beyond the news.
We are intentional about the stories we tell and the language we use in telling them.
Intentional about the people we speak to and why we speak to them.
Because here at Radio Now 95.3 FM, we aren't just telling any story.
We are telling your story.
And your story is all that matters.
You're listening to Now Breakfast.
Yes, it's Thursday, the 7th of December, here on Radio Now 95.3 FM Lagos. This morning, Community Watch coming your way. My name's Nabila Osman, here in the studio with
Stephen Imediego.
Yes, and this morning, we're going to open up the phone lines pretty early. But at the center of conversations is something that's actually in the papers today. Persons with disabilities, PWDs.
Right. And this refers to people who have physical disabilities. Sometimes we call them those who are challenged and so on and so forth. But the official term is persons with disabilities. This covers amputations as well as those who were born with other physical disabilities that prevent them from experiencing life the same way as everybody else does. And the reason why they are in the news this morning and in our conversation is because the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has been speaking quite extensively. I would say outside of the conversations around the economy and so on and so forth, this is one of the topics that he has been very direct on as far as his policies are concerned. It started off in a very, very good way, I would say, on the 9th of November when the President appointed Mr. Mohammed Issa as his senior special assistant on disability matters. And he gave a very, very direct charge to Mr. Issa. He wants him to ensure that every segment of the Nigerian society is sufficiently catered to within the ambit of the Renewed Hope agenda. And he's saying specifically as regards the people people living with disabilities, we need to ensure that all the programs of the ministries, the departments and agencies of the federal government align and ensure that there's the inculcation of PWD requirements and perspectives in their policies as well. So it's direct stuff, but it's just the genesis really of our conversation about persons with disabilities this morning on Community Watch, because the President has spoken again.
Well, the President has spoken again through the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, right? This was on I think last weekend when it was the day to celebrate people with disabilities, right? And there have been a series of activities that continue to unfold. And essentially the government is saying, or the President is saying that, look, we will shut down public buildings that do not comply with disability access. So typically you think about disabilities, you think very quickly of people who are missing one limb or the other, but you also think about people who have hearing problems, right? And by hearing problems, I don't mean when you're asking somebody, they hear word. I mean people who typically need an ear implant, or people who can't hear whatsoever.
Right.
People with speech problems as well also come into play here. People with sight problems, so we talk about blind people here. And really, our question to you is, does your building, home or office, right, or even government office, if you've seen a public building that actually has provision for disabilities, can you call up? Let us know. Let's have a conversation. Is Nigeria doing enough when it comes to people with disabilities? Is it realistic for the president to say that we will shut down a public building because that building is not complying with PWD's access? And here's why that question is important to ask. Does it sound like lip service? Because these buildings have already been erected.
Right.
They were already designed without PWDs in mind. So why have we not heard that there is some fund or the other that's going specifically to tweaking these buildings for this purpose? There's actually one public, I can't call it a device, but there's actually something that we use almost on a daily basis across the country that automatically includes some category, one particular category, actually two of PWDs. And I'll tell you about it in a moment, but let's call out the phone lines.
0913 5000 953. That is 0913 5000 953. You can also call on 0901 111 1953. That's 0901 111 1953. If you want to participate on WhatsApp, our WhatsApp number is 0809 682 2595. That's 0809 682 2595. We're focusing on persons with disabilities, and we want to know if you have seen any government building, or if your office building or your home actually caters to persons with disabilities. They are members of society, and to be honest, members of society that we often overlook.
So, do you want to hazard a guess as to what the thing is that we use more frequently than not?
Not here, but just in general.
No, in Nigeria.
In Nigeria, I was going to say the Google Capture thing of a Jimmy, because when it asks you to identify yourself as a human being, not as a robot, it tells you to click pictures. But in some cases, it offers you the opportunity to hear what is being said out loud. But now that I say that, I'm reminded that there's people who have sight impediments, so I don't know how they can exactly click on the hear button.
Well.
How many out of 10 did I get?
That's not the answer. It's actually ATMs.
Right.
Not all ATMs, some of them, a good number of them. So if you've been to an ATM machine before and you're punching in your PIN or whatever it is into the buttons, you'll notice that when you just use your fingers to feel around, you'll notice that each button has a number of raised bumps. Those bumps are actually Braille. It's numbers. It's literally Braille, but it's spelling out this is number 1, 0, exactly, for people who are blind. Now, the second aspect of that ATM, that the machine that you can actually use, is sound. So there are specific things. So each button has a specific sound. Each button is in a specific note. Right. So it's the same key, but a specific note. And if you do music, you would know just what exactly we're referring to here. If you're not somebody who reads music or understands, the different keys and the notes and all of that, then you probably wouldn't see it.
Or to simplify it, the keypad on your phone, actually, if you put up the sound on your keypad, they make different sounds when you type numbers on them. So,
exactly.
Wow.
And so, look, again, we're coming to this matter. If you're somebody who owns a public building, or maybe even own a residential building and you typically rent out, would you consider tweaking that building to accommodate disability access? And if you're somebody with a disability, we'd love to hear from you in terms of how you're able to simply move around. That's the conversation this morning, shining a little more light on people with disabilities. They number somewhere around somewhere around 25 million in the country. But if you speak with associations, right, they'll tell you that they're actually more than that. However, official figures put it between 25 and 30 million thereabouts.
Right.
So this is a significant portion of society. And we tend to think, there aren't so many of them. But that's not true. Right.
I think in a lot of cases, because we don't have as inclusive a society as we should have, people who have disabilities tend to shy away from public view. You don't find them outside.
Do they shy away, or is our public just not designed for them?
Our public is not designed for them, and you could point at some basic public infrastructure that does not cater to people with disabilities. One of which is the yellow and black buses that drive across Lagos that form a large part of the transportation infrastructure in Lagos. They don't cater to people with disabilities. The BRT buses, on the other hand, completely different situation. They have ramps built into the buses that will let someone in a wheelchair get on the bus or get off the bus. They also have spaces in those buses where wheelchairs can actually be strapped in so that they don't roll about while the bus is traveling from point A to point B. So if you ask me, I think that is one way that our government has been intentional about catering to people, members of our society who are citizens just like you and I, but have disabilities that prevent them from going through life as easily as each and every one of us does. But we want to hear your thoughts this morning. We want to hear your view on Community Watch. Our phone numbers are 0913 5000 953 at 0913 5000 953 and 0901 111 1953. That's 0901 111 1953. Would you consider tweaking your building if just to meet up with the government's directive that buildings, should consider people with disabilities? Or the building you currently live in, does it have those facilities? We're talking braille lettering on the walls so that those who are challenged in their sight can find their way around. Does it have a wheelchair access for those who have to use wheelchairs? That's not the state of your buildings. It's a judgment-free zone. We really just want to hear how many buildings in Nigeria, in Lagos, are actually taking care of Nigerians who have disabilities.
I'm also curious as to how families that have, loved ones with a disability, how they typically cope, right? Because that's in many ways, if we're a society that doesn't accommodate for them, that means you have what is a lifelong dependent, right? I say this because there are some countries that automatically inculcate this into their public space. So to a large degree, to some degree, people within certain categories of PWDs can actually have a measure of an independent life. So just all the things that you mentioned there in terms of our public infrastructure. But this conversation also makes me wonder about the people that in our local parlance we like to call MAD. And I say our local parlance simply because that is colloquial language in much of Nigeria, but with the wave of mental health awareness, we've come to, at the very least, there's a significant portion of urban society, especially if you're exposed to social media, then you know that these are mental illnesses, right, that people deal with all the time. And here's why I'm thinking about it in a similar relation to the PWD situation. It's that most of the time growing up where we called people mad, it was that we saw them on streets. Right? We saw them out in the open, not taken care of, dirty most of the time, unkempt, just roaming about. And you could tell that even though we are a community that have seen these people a lot, we didn't necessarily do anything about solving the issue. Right? So our public spaces, because you think that because someone has a severe mental health issue in that way, you think that they don't deserve a right to some public space in some form or the other. Right. So you typically see somebody taking a person like that to the park, to commune with nature. And I say it now, and everybody, some people are probably thinking it's juju we're discussing.
No, it isn't.
When you talk about communing with nature.
It isn't. Sometimes just being away from all that excess sensory experience can help somebody who has a mental health challenge. And let's be very honest, the people that we see on the streets are just one facet of a very wide spectrum of mental health issues. I think it's schizophrenia that leads a lot of people to leave their homes or be unmanageable to the point where their families give up on them and they start to roam our streets. There are a number of mental health issues that we don't talk about because, and I think it falls back down to what kind of society we are. We are uncomfortable with anything that is out of a particular mold. We expect you to be born, be a member of a family, go through that family, whether it's education, in whatever form it's available, get a job, get married, have children. And the moment you deviate from any of these modes, you start to be seen as an anomaly. And in a lot of cases, it is difficult for families to actually speak up and say, look, this is the challenge that we have. Let's adapt around it to ensure that this member of our family has an experience of what life really is, instead of the system where we just shut them off in one corner, shut the door on them, we never let them out of the house, we never introduce them to people. It basically feels that we are ashamed of those who do not have the same abilities that a large part of society has. So it's an ugly facet of our reality, but it is something that we need to continue to shine the light on. And I will say this of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu: it is good to see a president make this a part of his drive towards an inclusive Nigeria.
And inclusion is, the right word right there, because again, it comes back to just differences. If someone's different, phenomenally different or fundamentally different, then we don't make space for them in Nigeria, right?
Right.
Kind of find how you keep them at home, they just stay in there, and that's where anything happens. See, even our old people, our elderly, right? Many of them are not an active part of just everyday life. And we like to think that's because they're old, they're finished, life is good, celebration of life, all of that business. But there are countries in the world, in Japan actually, Japan is one of those blue zones where, aging is just
a beautiful thing.
Exactly. And you'd see a 70-year-old climbing a tree to harvest fruits.
Right.
Right? And it comes back to it. How much of our public space, our public infrastructure makes room for people with disabilities, for people struggling with mental health issues, for elderly people? So again, those people for whom difference is very fundamental. And this is a shameless plug. It's important to say that, as far as disability rights go, Daria Media, which is our sister organization at Radio Now, was fundamental to former President Muhammadu Buhari signing the Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act. This happened in the run-up to the 2019 elections, where the town hall that was held, and we had President Muhammadu Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo in conversation with Kadria Ahmed, and she put it to the president that, look, this bill has been sitting at your desk, on your desk, for a while now. You've not signed it. And shortly after that conversation, he actually signed it into law.
Right.
The power of talk.
The power of talk. And that's the reason why we want to get you to talk this morning. So our numbers, 0913 5000 953, 0901 111 1953. Nabila, this leads me to want to share a personal experience with you. In 2012, I started working at the media house in Edo State. I was there for about 4 years, and every year from 2012 till this year, there's been one persistent caller from that particular part of Nigeria. She calls every year on my birthday unfailingly. Now, I've had the same phone number for years, and because of her disability, she was one of the few people, my listeners, who had access to that phone number. She has called to say happy birthday every year. I'm talking over 10 years. She doesn't call once, and if I'm not available, she'll leave it alone or send a text message. No, she calls until I pick the phone. So Jennifer, from me to you, I know you're not in Lagos, but you're special, you're fantastic, and she has quite a phenomenal life. It is probably the one call that I look forward to every single year. She may not call throughout the year, but my birthday, Jennifer never misses it.
I'll be honest, that sounded like a very awe moment. I don't go awe. If not, I probably would have. But no, really, it is such an endearing story, an endearing experience to have.
It is. And it tells you also the power of what we do here, and what media is to people. For persons with disabilities, especially those who have sight disabilities, the media is a tool, especially radio, through which they can find out what's happening in society, what conversations are going on, what changes are being made, whether or not society is paying attention to them. So if you have a disability and you're listening to us this morning, we want you to understand that we are very, very interested in your welfare. This is something that has no other goal than to ensure that every Nigerian, that you are represented. Your disability may be the focal point of your life because of how the Nigerian society treats you, but we want you to understand that it is important to us that you are recognized as a Nigerian and that Nigeria continues to cater to you because you are a Nigerian, regardless of your disability.
You know, one thing that people tend to ignore quite a bit, which is interesting in a society like ours where we're very religious, is that a disability can happen to you at any point in time in your life.
That's a sobering thought there.
Yeah. So you see a situation where you're born, everything's working fine and dandy, whatever the case may be. You go on with your life, you do a few decades or whatever the case may be, you're used to it. Then an accident, a health issue, whatever it may be. And people have found themselves in a position where they then have to tweak their homes to accommodate them and allow them move around and give them some form of independence. And I think about people who are into, for instance, physiotherapy, right? And how if a person breaks a leg, an arm, breaks some part of their body that's important to movement, in that particular moment, it's a temporary disability, but you are hampered, you're hindered in one form or the other.
Right.
And then physiotherapy has to get you towards the point of learning once again how to walk, something that you've been doing all your life.
Right. Like you said, it's something that happens to you, and I like to think of this that we are all one incident away from living with a disability. Accidents happen, and in some cases, even aging is the sort of accident that changes you from being independent to now needing to be dependent on somebody else. Alzheimer's, all sorts of illnesses that affect the elderly show up, and they change someone from being able to carry on with their life, not needing the assistance of anybody, to needing caregivers, to needing family to get closer to them. So conversations like this are important. Making changes to our public spaces are important. Making changes to our private spaces are important. Making changes to our attitudes, how we look at those who have disabilities, is equally important. It could be something as simple as helping someone who has a disability cross a road, get onto a bus, one simple service or the other. Or it could be something as simple as ensuring that an elderly person who gets into a bus has the more comfortable seats. Because let's be honest, we all hope to get old someday. It's the pride of being African and being Nigerian. And if we can start now to make these small changes, I believe that we will make our society a better place for those who really, really need society to be kinder to them.
Well, no, it's our conversation this morning on Now Breakfast. Community Watch returns, as you know, for I almost said first thing tomorrow, but it's breakfast that returns first thing tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it has. David Chedu is here to torment you for the next few hours. I mean, entertain you. Well, probably inform you. There might be some torment involved. I don't know. The midday has a weird way of deciding whether it's torment or information that you get. But David Chedu is around the corner to start you off on Now Midday with an opportunity to talk about issues on your take.
And look, John, if you're listening, it's you I'm blaming for this. Let me just let you know now. We do have to extend our sincerest and deepest apologies. We are going to be off air for a very brief moment. We return to bring you the conversations that are critical to, just getting on with your day and being a fruitful and productive Nigerian. So you can expect David Chedo on Now Midday in just a bit. Now Breakfast returns first thing in the morning, 5:30 a.m. tomorrow, Friday, December the 8th. My name's Nabila Usman with
Stephen Imediego.
Thank you.
Every second and every minute, something new.